What is up, guys? Welcome back to another amazing episode of the BnG podcast. And I have an amazing episode for you guys in store today. I know when I left you guys on Sunday, I was kind of irate. I was kind of depressed. We took an ugly loss. We took an ugly loss on the chin to the Detroit Lions, but it's Wednesday and it's time to look forward to a new week. And guess what? We have Philly week. We have our first NFC East rivals, our first division rivals on the schedule. It's a homecoming for Carson in a sense, even though they kind of come down here. And I had to bring in the best. I had to bring in my guy, Mr.CROCKPOT from the Party on Broad podcast. I actually did an appearance on their podcast in the summer, and I enjoyed myself. So I told him as soon as I got off, I had to get him for a week 3 preview. So I'm glad to have you, man. How you doing?
I'm doing well, man. Carson Wentz versus Jalen Hurts week. Doesn't get any better than that, man. It's an NFC East, division battle, but I can't wait to see Jalen Hurts go up against Carson Wentz, man. It's going to be so much fun.
I'm not even gonna lie to you though, man. Like this was the one date on the calendar once the schedule was made that I circled. I think I talked to you guys like right after the schedule. I was telling you guys how excited I was for it and things like that. But I'll be lying to you if I said that my mood hasn't dampened a little bit, man. And the reason that I say that is because you guys look like gangbusters in the first 2 weeks. After the first 2 weeks, people are talking about you guys contending for the Super Bowl, being NFC contenders and things like that. And in all honesty, you guys beat a team that we got demolished by. And I don't say that lightly. Like Detroit physically manhandled us. Like it was 22-0 at a point. And you guys actually were up by like 20 points with them at one point before they made a big comeback. So you guys beat them 38-35. And you guys absolutely destroyed the Minnesota Vikings on national TV. And I got a good glimpse of that game as well. So how are you feeling about your Eagles after the first 2 weeks of the season, man?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a high and then an even higher for Philadelphia Eagles fans. Ironically, how the Detroit Lions kind of handled the Washington Commanders kind of made me feel better about the Eagles' performance in week 1, because there was a lot of people that were not very happy about the Eagles after week 1, especially on the defensive side of the football. And I'm talking about Jonathan Gannon, that soft coverage, playing 10 yards off the line of scrimmage, not blitzing. The game plan was very poor against Jared Goff, kind of giving him whatever he wants. And then we got to week 2, and not just offensively, but defensively, things got kind of back where we kind of first projected them. So things are pretty good in Philly right now. I think things are maybe a little too good in Philly because all signs point to a revenge game, a trap game in many respects. And if we talk about predictions, we'll go there. But yeah, Philly's riding really high right now. Along with Jalen Hurts and this Eagles offense that seems to be a top 3 unit in the league right now, man. It's very impressive.
Yeah, I know that we actually talked about Hurts on my appearance on you guys' pod, and I'm a big advocate for Hurts. I know a lot of my Washington Commander fans, they always get on me like, oh, dude, you're picking between the two and things like that. But no, I just like Jalen Hurts as a football player. I think that he's a tremendous leader, and I thought that if he made any marginal improvements as a passer, which it seemed like he has, he'll be one of the league's elite. How you feel about Jalen's progression throughout the first 2 weeks of the season?
It's wild, man. And let me preface, I'm not the biggest Jalen Hurts guy. I think Jalen Hurts is going to be a good NFL quarterback. But in Philadelphia, we're looking at this through the lens of, can Jalen Hurts take that next step and be a franchise quarterback, a guy that can beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the playoffs, handle the Blitz. You look at his progressions through 2 games, it's absolutely ridiculous, especially on third down. Jalen Hurts' completion percentage was 26th best in the NFL. He was awful on third downs in 2021. This year, over 106 quarterback rating on third downs. He's been absolutely sensational. What you're going to be seeing a lot on Sunday is a lot of RPOs, a lot of taking that, a lot of having lead blockers and kind of making the defense guess wrong. And Jalen Hurts has been sensational at just getting and being an efficient weapon in this offense. It's kind of been a more well-balanced offense compared to last year. I'm even surprised they threw as much against the Vikings when all signs pointed to a more heavy 2021 rushing offense. But you look at Jalen Hurts, he's going through he's making those progressions in his reads. He's throwing more accurately on the run, which was an area of weakness. He's hitting the intermediate routes, which was an area of weakness. There's a list that goes on and on when it comes to Jalen Hurts, albeit it's only 2 games. It's a long season. This was a huge game on Monday night for Jalen Hurts because the Eagles have the second easiest schedule in the NFL. There's not many games to really kind of nitpick and break down the film, which we did just a couple of days ago. But that's been the thing with Jalen Hurts. He's a good quarterback, but he can't get it done against good teams. He has 0 wins against teams with 500 or more record, and they absolutely blew the roof off on Monday night.
Yeah, absolutely. I forgot to mention a lot of my criticism on my critics as well. They say, man, you like Jalen because you guys have the same name. Hey, man, it's something in that first name, man. I'm just saying. But let's touch on the quarterback. Let's touch on the quarterback that has now been on both sides of this rivalry. Our Commander Carson, Captain Carson, as we like to call him in these parts. But honestly, man, Carson has surprised me. He's thrown for 650 yards through 2 games with a 67 completion percentage, passing completion percentage, 7 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. One thing that I will mention is that I feel like the only flaw that I've seen in this game right now that, you guys in Philly or the Colts fans have warned me about is he does have a tendency of holding on to the ball. I haven't really seen the miracle shots yet or the glory plays that he's looking for. But he does have the tendency to hold the ball a little long. But we all know that with Carson comes some off the field drama as well, some locker room issues that have been talked about, some leadership, some character issues that have been talked about. So how do you think his psyche is going to be as he faces the team that drafted him for the first time?
He's got this game circled on his refrigerator from the jump. This is a huge game for Carson Wentz. And let me say, I was a humongous Carson Wentz fan. That injury he had back in 2017 against, I believe, the Rams, if I'm mistaken, when the Eagles were 11-2. That was one of the darkest days of my life. darkest days. But you nailed on it. The character issues, the leadership issues, they're all there. Whether since a couple of injuries, and some of those injuries are not his fault. The one were from Jadeveon Clowney where he just took a shot in the head. That was not his fault. But since then, there's been some mechanical issues, things like that have really kind of, slowed down this guy's career. When I look at Carson Wentz, it's kind of a lot of the same issues that I had as an Eagles fan. He takes way too many risks. His decision making when it counts is never great. He takes way too many hits as well. Carson Wentz is Carson Wentz, and no one's really been able to kind of coaching wise connect with Carson to kind of take away some of those concerns. So I think Carson Wentz is going to have performances and it could be Sunday against the Eagles where you're like, wow, what a game. And then, come closer to the end of the season when the game's on the line and the season's on the line, he's either not playing or he's making mistakes or the team and him have come out flat. So that's kind of been the narrative.
Absolutely, man. And as I kind of expressed when I was on you guys' show that I wasn't a Carson Wentz, I did not want him on my team. My biggest reason as I wasn't a fan of the trade is that, that $28 million cap hit that he was taking. And I'm not sure if he was a $28 million player, but I'll be naive to not admit that he's head and shoulders above a guy like Taylor Heineke or guys that we've been having in the past, like a Case Keenum and things like that. Just the simple arm talent that he made on the game-winning throws against Jacksonville and things like that. I lie to you not. It's throws that we haven't really seen in a long time in Washington. Now, is that the more talk about our situation in Washington, or is that the more talk about Carson Wentz? I don't know right now because, like I said, he seems to be productive. And like you said, he does have. I've already chalked it up. Every Sunday, I found myself tweeting that Carson's going to Carson. And what I mean by that is he's going to give you that hero ball, that negative play, that turnover worthy type play. But he does have the arm talent to throw you back and things like that. Is that something that has always been in this game since he's been in the league?
Pre-injury, his improv on the run, when under pressure was magical. That guy was absolutely, and that's kind of what I'm talking about with those injuries. Like, since those injuries, that has definitely kind of decreased over time. And correct me if I'm wrong, but rookie season Carson, 2017 Carson, that guy was
so different.
He made nothing. He made just magic out of nothing, over and over and over again. We just really haven't seen that. And that was one of his biggest skill sets, especially being able to get out of the pocket and use his arm. And he's got everything you want: size, arm strength, you name it. It's just the stuff that you said off the field, the leadership kind of concerns. When it comes to slowing down Carson Wentz, it's all about getting pressure. And that's when kind of things kind of start to unravel. You look at even last week, he was 5 of 14 on dropbacks when under pressure. And he averaged 3.8 yards per attempt in week 2. And you look at the Eagles blitz, they did give up 35 points against the Lions, but when the Eagles do blitz, it's been really effective. And what I would be nervous about, Commanders fans, is especially the blitz up the middle. Like TJ Edwards was all over the field. He had a really poor game against the Lions, but we were really impressed overall with Jonathan Gannon and how he definitely provided much more pressure on the Kirk Cousins and the Vikings in week 2. So if you can get in the head of Carson Wentz and, kind of get him throwing off his back foot like the Eagles did against Kirk Cousins in Monday Night Football, that's kind of what the Eagles game plan has to be.
Absolutely. And it's interesting that you touch on that up the middle pressure. I don't know if you know, we actually lost our starter for presumably the season in Chase Roulier. This is a guy that was battling back from a fibula injury last year, and he didn't have the best 2 games early this season. But this is a guy who was a staple on the offensive line. He's been there for a while. So how do you think, let's stay with that trench play, how do you think the guys like Fletcher Cox, Jordan Davis, and those defensive line, how you think they're going to eat on Sunday? Because the offensive line had a very putrid performance against the Detroit Lions, if I do say so myself.
It depends on what Jonathan Gannon, our defensive coordinator, you get on Sunday. You never truly know. Like, there's some skeptics like myself. So it's really kind of a roller coaster ride when it comes to the Eagles defense. Just to go piggyback off the Eagles blitz, they were 29th in blitz rate and 29th in defensive EPA in 2021. So far this year, 12th in blitz rate, 3rd in the league in defensive EPA per play when they bring the pressure. So this is a much different kind of pressure the Eagles will be providing, whether it's the linebackers or the cornerbacks. They've been getting home, and that's good to see. They're not like tops in the league in sacks, but they're doing a really good job getting pressure on the quarterback. Fletcher Cox, Javon Hargrave, they definitely played better against the Vikings. They were absolutely absent against the Lions. Hassan Reddick was absolutely absent against the Lions and the Vikings. Jonathan Gannon's actually, playing Reddick way more in coverage, and he just looks silly. To no one's surprise against Justin Jefferson in a couple of plays. I don't really understand what the idea there is, especially, Hassan Reddick should be up at the line of scrimmage and providing pressure every single freaking time. And we really haven't seen that yet. But that's definitely an area the Eagles should have an advantage. So I expect the Eagles defensive line to be playing physical, providing that up front, in the middle pressure to kind of get Carson Wentz, kind of guessing. And that's when those turnovers and mistakes happen. You look at the Eagles defense, this year compared to previous years, they're getting turnovers. This was a defense that never got defensive takeaways. Like the last couple of years, they're among the bottom in the league in defensive takeaways. Darius Slay, Avonte Maddox, Kaiser White, like they have been using the pressure, the quarterback pressure, to equal results and turnovers, and that's something the Eagles fans haven't seen in a long time.
I'm beefing with Darius Slay right now. He lost.
Woo!
He lost my fantasy matchup because he held Justin Jefferson in solitary confinement. I tell you, he had that man in prison all night long. Justin Jefferson was in hell. It was an amazing performance by Darius Slay for sure.
Right.
Let's stay in the trenches. I don't know if you know, but the holes in the Washington's defense have been open all night like 7-Eleven, man. And there's a stat that if you eliminate the quarterback runs, that the runs on average are averaging about 8.5 yards per carry. Wow. DeAndre Smith averaged 11.6 yards per carry on a bad ankle against us last week, for crying out loud. And I went back and watched my appearance on you guys' show in preparation for today. And it seemed to me that you guys were a little surprised that I ranked them guys as a 3.5 out of 5 and not as highly. And this is one of the reasons why. You know, everybody talks about those 5 first-round picks, but I see these dudes get bullied far too often. I see them get washed down in the run game far too often. And you touched on it earlier, how you didn't even expect the Eagles to pass as much as they did against the Minnesota Vikings, because we know them as a run-first team. You know, they have that backfield by committee with Gainwell, Miles Sanders, and everybody like that. And then they have that elite offensive line. So what do you expect? Oh, and not to mention that guy, Jalen Hurts, and what he can do with his legs as well. Yeah. So what do you think, and what do you expect from the Eagles rushing offense against this poor Commanders defense?
It's elite, bro. That's their bread and butter, and it's been really kind of nice to see the Eagles pass setting up the run this year. It used to be at least the second half of 2021, the Eagles run attack was the best in the league, but that's all they did. Hurts was throwing like 10 to 15 times a game. Like, it was basically run, and make sure just limit the turnovers in the passing game. But this year, Hurts is going out of the pocket. You're seeing more RPOs. Again, it's only 2 games. We'll see what happens, week 10, and we'll have a much better sample size to kind of break down the film. But the Eagles' run game starts with Jalen Hurts. That is what he does for the Eagles' run game is absolutely massive. And Miles Sanders, and I'm not a Miles Sanders guy. I'm more of a Kenny Gainwell guy. Miles Sanders is an immense talent when on the field. The problem, he's not ever on the field. He's been hurt. He gets banged up way too easily. He makes stupid mistakes. He fumbles the ball. He's not a good receiver. He's been great this year, man. He's been very efficient. He cut down the mistakes. He's been on the field so far, knock on wood. Miles Sanders has been a spark plug for this offense. I think he's had like at least 80 yards rushing in 2 straight games. Jalen Hurts, another area improvement. Jalen Hurts was dead last in the league in checkdowns among starting quarterbacks. They're going down. He's been, at least in week 2, going down to the checkdowns a lot more, with whether that's Miles Sanders or Kenny Gainwell or Boston Scott. Jalen Hurts is taking what the defense is giving him, and that's definitely something different that we've seen from Jalen Hurts. Typically, whether it's a clean pocket or under pressure, Jalen Hurts would put his head down, tuck and run, and we've seen less of that. So this is a different kind of Eagles offense. They're still like among the tops in the league when it comes to rushing attack. I think they lead the league in rushing touchdowns with 6. They're absolutely a beast there. 5. They're 5th in the league in yards per carry, 5.2. They're tied for 1st in rushing first downs in the league at 23. And I think what we've seen the most efficient wise from the Eagles is third down. This is one of the best third down teams in the league, and I think Washington's pretty good defensively on third down. So that's going to be one of my key matchups to watch there. I think what I saw was Washington has the 4th best third down defense in the league right now at 28%, and the Eagles are, I think, top 3 as well in offensive third down conversion. So that's definitely a little area that I'll be watching.
And that's definitely an outlier for history from Washington. You can look in the historic ranks. We have historically in the 2010 some of the worst third down defenses in NFL history, and I know about those numbers as well. And I think that some of that data is skewed is because those teams aren't getting the third down on us. They're killing us on first and second down, especially the Detroit Lions. The Detroit Lions had 7 explosive plays. So when you have that type of game, you don't need third down when you gaining 50 yards a pop. I do think that we showed improvement against the Jacksonville Jaguars, but to this point, I'm gonna still call those the Jacksonville Jaguars. So who are they? But yeah, I think that we are making marginal improvements. So that's something to look at on Sunday for sure. So let me get to some positive vibes for my Commanders, man.
All right.
I think that this wide receiver room, and I don't parse my words when I say this. I know it's only week 2. I think that we have an elite set of wide receivers. If you look at it, we have a $24 million man in Terry McLaurin, but he's third in receptions, and he hasn't even caught a touchdown yet. And we've averaged 28 points per game. So we can let it fly with the best of them. And I think part of that, not only with Carson, is that our receivers get open. You can exploit Curtis Samuel in a multitude of ways to exploit the defense. I've actually not been too pleased with Terry McLaurin's target share because I think that if you featuring a guy with paying a guy $24 million, you have to feature him like a Stephon Diggs gets featured in Buffalo, like these elite receivers get featured all over the place. But you guys have a pretty good trio of receivers over there as well, and A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and I even saw Quez Watkins making a huge play. He's a speed demon. So I guess my first question is, how are you feeling about your receiver room? And let's take the bias out of it on both ways. Who do you think has the better receiver room going into Sunday's matchup?
Going against each other or just overall in the NFL?
Overall in the NFL.
I definitely think it's the Eagles right now. And I'm a Jahan Dotson fan. I'm a big NFL draft guy, and I was really high on him heading and going to the Commanders. But for me, it's definitely the Philadelphia Eagles, and you could probably throw in Goddard there, who plays a ton. He's more of a receiving tight end anyway. But what A.J. Brown, what he has, that gravity he has as a receiver on the outside is absolutely ridiculous. It's something the Eagles haven't had since my guys like Deshaun Jackson. Like, he just opens up so much for Dallas Goedert and Devontae Smith. And we finally saw it in week 2. I was hoping to see in week 1, and Jalen Hurts and Devontae were a little off. They had some chemistry timing issues, but in week 2, Devontae Smith was targeted on the first play of that game and was a huge integral part of the Eagles offense, which we expect, because Devontae in the slot, we're seeing Devontae much more in the slot this year compared to last year, because now they have A.J. Brown. Devontae in the slot, man, going up against the slot defenders and those kind of like CB2s and CB3s of the world, that's a mismatch every single time. Devontae, if there was any takeaway from the Eagles last year, whether you're a Hurts guy or not, is that there were so many missed opportunities for Devontae. He should have had way more yards, way more targets, way more touchdowns. He was sensational. The throws just weren't there. The timing and the chemistry issues were there. So I think it is definitely in favor of the Eagles right now. I'm really curious how that Smith-Jahan Dotson matchup will be in terms of slot receivers, because I think that's a big one. I think that's kind of something that has really nipped the butt of the Commanders, especially those slot receivers, Amon-Ra St. Brown, guys like that in the slot that have really kind of torn up the Commanders' defense. So I'm expecting Devontae to have a huge game in week 3, man. That all signs point to another strong game from Devontae, who was sensational against the Vikings.
Absolutely. And not just because I'm a Washington fan. I'm going to just have to lean the other way. And let me give you some reasons why. Sure. I love A.J. Brown. When and I'm pretty sure you've seen it as well, when they like clump the 2019 receivers all together with DK, Debo, and things like that. A.J. Brown is the one person, even though I do give Terry McLaurin a slight edge, he's the one person I've been hesitant to, just declare Terry much better than. I even mentioned on Monday night when I was watching him, and you might kind of see it as a Philly fan as well. I said, A.J. Brown plays like T.O., man. Like
Yeah.
he's physical with the ball in his hands. He's his run after the catch is lethal and things like that. So I think that at the wide receiver one position, I do think that they're deadlocked. I think that they're pretty even and things like that. But I think that our receiver room just runs deep. I love Quez Watkins, but he's kind of like a one trick pony to me. And if you're putting Curtis Samuel, me technically, I would put Jahan Dotson as our wide receiver too, and Curtis Samuel as our third because he's just more of a gadget guy, even though he's been a staple of this offense. I lied to you not, man. I was out there in training camp practice, and I said Jahan Dotson is probably the most nuanced receiver on this roster already, Terry McLaurin included. Now, Terry has some freakish physical attributes like the speed and the physicality that Jahan Dotson hasn't really showcased yet, but just like the way he runs his route, he's a natural hand catcher and things like that. And he's backed it up so far. Like that game-winning touchdown catch he made against the Jacksonville Jaguars was simply absurd. So yeah, just kind of the depth. We got Logan Thomas coming back, and I'll give you a sneaky one. I think we have this tight end coming back in Cole Turner. I think he's coming back this week. He was huge in training camp. Got nicked up right before the preseason, and I think they've been keeping him on ice for this matchup in specific. You didn't hear that from me though. You did not hear that from me. That from me. But this is a 6'7" dude, tight end. Carson loves his tight ends out of Nevada, and I think that he can make an impact throughout this season as well. So I'm gonna get you out of here on this one. Let me get a score prediction, and then let me get one bold prediction for Sunday's game. Whichever way you want to take it, it'd be from the offense, the defense, the special team, game flow. A score prediction and a bold prediction for Sunday's game. I'm gonna get you on out of here.
This is one of those games, like I said at the start of the show, where like all signs point to the Eagles' offense rolling in this one. You look at especially the Commanders' rushing defense. They have the defense has allowed 29 points per game. They're currently 29th in run defense. They allow 157 rushing yards per game through 2 weeks. That is just tailor-made for an Eagles offense that, just offensive line-wise, they are so good in just bullying, defensive lines. And I just don't know when it comes to the depth of the Commanders' defensive line, when it comes to the Commanders' linebacking play. I think there's a major advantage there. So right now, I think I'm going to say, I think the line is at 6.5. Mm-hmm. I will say 33-27. Eagles get the W in this one. And I think this will be another game for DeVonta Smith. I think DeVonta Smith will kind of continue to carve up the Commanders' kind of slot defenders. I think DeVonta and Jalen finally got on the same page in week 2, and I look for that to continue in week 3.
Absolutely, man. Well, I appreciate you coming on the show, man. If you have anything you want to plug, go ahead and let our fans know. We get some pretty good traction over here. So let's go out to a pretty good audience. So is there anything you want to plug before we head on out?
Nah, I mean you don't have to check out our channel because we're pretty heavy when it comes to Philly sports. But I will say, if you love the NFL draft as much as I do, I put out NFL draft content about 6 to 8 videos a week, every single week, whether they're top quarterbacks or what. So I'm an NFL draft junkie. I've got top 10 rankings of the top way too early cornerbacks, quarterbacks, edge rushers, interior defensive linemen, safeties, you name it. It's all on the channel. And I think that's like the bread and butter of our channel is the NBA and the NFL drafts. That's my love. That's my absolute love. So if you love those two things, go check us out. The Painted Lines. I love the quarterback class in this draft. So all the gushing about Jalen Hurts, I want to make things clear. Like I'm still very much worried about that upcoming contract. I am very much interested with the way this roster is currently set up. You bring on a rookie quarterback, an elite rookie. You got 2 first-round picks next year. There will be one available in that mid-first round with that Saints pick. And you have a young elite quarterback on a rookie contract with that roster construction. That's really exciting. So as much as Jalen Hurts looks good, we still have a long way to go. It's a long season. But anyway, go check us out if you love NFL draft or NBA draft content.
For sure, man. As you know, us over at Bleeding BnG, we only mess with the best. So I can attest that they put out great work over there. So be sure to check out my guy, man. And I appreciate you coming on the show today. Let's have a good one on Sunday, man.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much for letting me join, man. I'm honored. Go Birds, and good luck on Sunday. I think it's going to be a close game. Like, I do think that like all the stuff that like what your gut feels like it's a division rivalry game. Like, and those all that like these numbers go out the window on Sunday.
For sure. I see that you had Washington covering, and that's what I'm gonna go with for my score prediction. I don't know if we win or lose, but I do think we cover the 6.5. But like I said, man, I appreciate you coming on, man, and let's have one on Sunday, man.
Awesome. Sounds great.
All right, man. Have a good night.
You too.